This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get free access to Nebula, the ad-free, creator-controlled streaming service, when you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link below. History is full of examples of people in power trying to restrict access to certain material. Whether it's literature, journalism, music, websites, or some other supposedly inappropriate or dangerous content, as long as there has been a difference of opinion, there have been attempts to suppress those deemed antagonistic towards the status quo. The execution of Socrates, the burning of Mayan books by Spanish bishops, Cambridge's banning of Darwin's Origin of Species, book burnings in Nazi Germany, all instances of those in positions of authority attempting to suppress access to knowledge and dissenting opinion. And the practice continues to this day, both in the open and covertly. In this episode, we'll consider the modern forefront of the censorship battle, the internet, and what is to be done about the practice of banning and manipulating information. If you were asked to name an instance of modern-day censorship, the first example that would probably come to mind is China's intense curation of the internet in their country. According to most experts, China's censorship is the most sophisticated and comprehensive in the world, with severe restrictions placed on both publishing and accessing certain content. The Chinese government strictly monitors and polices internet activity, and are quick to remove content deemed objectionable. This tendency has earned their policy the nickname the Great Firewall of China. But China isn't the only country engaging in suppression of information. In fact, most governments are engaged in some form of censorship over the internet in their respective countries. If you're familiar with my content, you're probably aware of what prompted this week's video. For those out of the loop, here's a quick rundown. Last week, I posted a video called "The CIA is a Terrorist Organization." Unsurprisingly, it was instantly demonetized. But what happened next was pretty alarming. Later in the day, I started getting reports from patrons that my video was no longer appearing in their subscription feed. Then I got word that subscribers weren't being notified of the new upload. Finally, the really strange part. What had begun to happen, and this is still the case as of writing this script, is that even if you search the exact title of my video, it still won't appear in YouTube search results. This had never happened to me before. A few months earlier, I had posted a video about America's police brutality problem. That one got age-gated, but was still searchable. It also earned me a visit from the Department of Homeland Security. This made me think, why was my CIA video, content that did not violate any of YouTube's terms and conditions, getting a harsher treatment than a video that did explicitly show violence? I tweeted at YouTube to ask for an explanation, and to no one's surprise, they lied. Their response was that it sometimes takes a few days for the video to show up in search results. As someone who has been posting to YouTube for years and has uploaded hundreds of videos, I knew this to be false. If you search a video by its exact title, and especially if you add the channel name to the search, it will come up. The conclusion I reached is that because of Google's contract with the CIA, YouTube was obligated to shadow ban my video. You can read my very long Twitter thread on the topic by following the link in the description. This blatant suppression of content critical of a US entity made me think I should probably cover the topic of censorship. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the state of the internet and the suppression of information. You may be thinking that this whole video will be a misguided tantrum about free speech. Let's start there. There are certain groups and outlets that routinely make a fuss about supposed censorship of their content. PragerU is perhaps the most obvious example. They claim that platforms like Facebook and YouTube are suppressing their right to free speech by hiding their content. First of all, this is not the case. The whole conservative ideas are censored shtick is just a bit of theater, as evidenced by the data on which content is shared and distributed most heavily on social media. Spoiler alert, it's stuff like PragerU. I do believe that everyone should have the right to express themselves within the limits of a platform's terms and conditions. If content is suppressed while not violating the rules, that is unacceptable, whatever the ideological positions espoused in that content. If PragerU were actually being censored, I would be 100% against it. They're not, but that's beside the point. The distinction we need to make is where the right to free speech actually applies. Your First Amendment right to the freedom of expression only applies where the government is involved. The state is prohibited from suppressing your right to express yourself in a public forum, such as a town hall meeting, or in the case of Knight versus Trump, a presidential Twitter account. After Donald Trump blocked several users from viewing his feed, a federal court ruled in favor of those users, saying that the president had no right to restrict access to what he had turned into an official government forum. Private companies have no such obligation to allow you to express yourself. This is where we need to pause for a moment and consider the nature of the internet. When the internet was first developed, many people had high hopes that it would become a sort of digital commons, a place where people could gather and freely exchange information, sort of like a giant public library. As we all know, that is not what became of the internet. As soon as corporations figured out just how lucrative this new frontier would be, the project was poisoned and it became just another tentacle of the modern market. In today's modern internet, all of our activity and information passes through the hands of private companies, who have final say over what is accessible, visible, and permissible on the internet. People tend to forget that Google is not some universal public utility. It's part of a giant company that exists within the internet. When you're engaging with a Google property like YouTube, your right to free speech is checked at the door. Whereas your physical world is controlled by your country's government, your digital life is ruled by massive corporations and a handful of absurdly wealthy individuals. It is against the interest of these companies and billionaires to allow the free exchange of information on their platforms. Instead, sites like YouTube and Twitter are meticulously curated in order to mediate the conversation and most effectively monetize our traffic. YouTube tells you what to watch next, and it's always videos that will make them money. The ones from big channels, videos that are monetized and highly shareable, like, for example, the aforementioned PragerU. Same with Twitter and Facebook. You're served tailored ads and recommendations that align with what those companies want you to engage with. This is the problem in a nutshell. In a world where the internet is a necessity for most people, where our news is online, our shopping, our education, does it seem appropriate that these corporations operate almost entirely outside the control of governing bodies and the general populace? Perhaps it's time to consider a new Internet Bill of Rights to protect reasonable speech online. The internet at this point is essentially a public utility based solely on its necessity in modern life. Sites like YouTube and Facebook are essentially monopolies. There are no real alternatives, but these companies are not regulated like monopolies. Take your local water company, for example. It's a public utility, and everyone is served at the same level. If the water utility were run like Facebook, they could divert water away from undesirable areas and towards certain other areas that have somehow earned their favor in opaque ways. We're still very new to the internet, and especially social media. The World Wide Web has only really existed since 1990, and Facebook has only been around since 2004. The massive amount of transformative change that has occurred in the past 30 years has vastly outpaced our understanding of what the internet could be. By now, it should be clear that the internet will be the dominating factor of modern life for the foreseeable future, and we need to take it seriously. We need to make plans for how to ensure that the internet doesn't simply become a propaganda tool to be wielded by massive corporations that are free from oversight. Whether this means transforming the internet into a public utility or building an entirely new, unmonetized alternative to the corporate internet is up for debate. But it's certainly something we need to consider. Just as libraries serve as an effective public institution allowing for the democratization of learning, a public alternative to the internet as it currently exists could democratize the flow of information in our digital age, free from the coercion of private interests, manipulated news feeds, and targeted advertising. But to return to the issue of my CIA video for a moment, there is another factor to consider. While multi-billion-dollar corporations are the main driver of internet curation and censorship in America, many of these companies have lucrative contracts with government agencies, including the CIA. Sometimes there will be actual instances of government censorship in the United States. I believe my CIA video is one example. If YouTube would just be transparent about their reasoning for the shadow ban, I wouldn't complain. But the fact that they tried to be covert about it, then lied about the cause is alarming. The CIA and the military-industrial complex have long waged a sort of psychological campaign to manufacture consent among the American public. The Department of War became the Department of Defense. Every action the US takes abroad is in the name of national security, even when we're meddling in tiny nations that could never do anything to harm us even if they wanted to. Censorship is not simply a matter of restricting access to content critical of the status quo. It also entails promoting material that's designed to reinforce that status quo, to manufacture a sense of patriotism, American exceptionalism, and fear of the unknown. We need to be aware of the extent to which the powers that be are influencing the content we consume online, and that those powers are not only government agencies, but also powerful corporations that benefit from our country's warlike nature. As you know, YouTube treats its creators horribly. The shadow banning of my last video is just the most recent example. Stuff like that is why my creator friends and I teamed up to build Nebula, a streaming platform built by and for YouTubers like me, so we don't have to worry about demonetization. Since Nebula is all about creating thoughtful content, we've partnered with CuriosityStream, an established streaming platform with a solid track record of caring about great educational content and the financial security of those who produce it. CuriosityStream is an online streaming service with thousands of nonfiction titles from some of the best filmmakers in the game. You can find tons of great episodes, like their series on the internet, which is a great watch if you enjoyed this video. As educational creators ourselves, we love CuriosityStream, so we've worked out a deal, where if you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link below, you'll also get access to Nebula, 100% free. For a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering 26% off their annual plan. That's less than $15 a year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula, which, in my humble opinion, is a pretty great deal. Since we're all stuck inside anyway, why not spend some time learning about fascinating topics on CuriosityStream? Or check out Nebula's original content, including my upcoming series on the resurgence of fascism. You can also watch all my videos as they were intended, ad-free. There really is something for everyone. And by signing up at the link below, you're helping us produce more content without the fear of demonetization. Give CuriosityStream a shot, and get free access to Nebula when you sign up using the link below. It really does help support my channel and educational creators all across YouTube. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, consider subscribing to stay up to date with my latest episodes. If you hated it, go ahead and drop a thumbs down. You can check out my previous episodes by clicking the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.